maketh heaven and earth. Amen. Okay, so we're dealing with part two, right? Part one, I essentially had to stop because for some unknown reason, I think either attack from the devil, I don't know, the stream had decided to cut out. So now we're dealing with the idea of owning black slaves, right? Another reason why I don't, of course, affirm Muhammad as a final prophet is because of his conduct. We've mentioned before, prior, Muhammad's conduct when it came to the fighting of the Jews in Banu Qurayza. We've mentioned, his marriage to Aisha. We've mentioned a bunch of stuff like that as well. Now we've mentioned that evidently Muslims would say there's context to these passages, and I've, in no controversial way said that, further discussions about these very topics, it's not something that we can ignore. And, when I engage with Muslims, as I have done for the last 6 years, I always, will engage them on their level. If they understand that these texts exist, I will deal with them on that level. If they don't, then I don't need to be dealing with them on that level. It's not up to me to be teaching somebody else their religion, and I will just be showing them, the gospel of saving grace. And I want to add as an encouragement to everybody who does polemics, of any sense, right? We are here to glorify Christ. It's not about being the greatest at doing polemics. I don't applaud the likes of Avery. I don't applaud Chris. I don't applaud any of these people. They're doing what I did years ago, And whether people think they're doing it better or worse is up to them. I don't care. It's not. We're really not out here to score points about learning about other people's religions. But the only reason why I know this stuff is because I've studied it. And the only reason why I'm sharing this with you today is because I'm sharing why I personally am not a Muslim. You know. Now, if I was speaking to a Muslim one-on-one, there's different reasons I would give for, Islam and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously, if these things come up, if I'm speaking to a Muslim and they're like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I will tell them what I think. I will tell them that's my opinion. And, we will leave it there. But, one of the things that I mentioned in the last stream was Muhammad owned black slaves. It says here, Sahih Muslim 2323, Anas reported that Allah's Messenger had in one of his journeys his black slave, who was called Anjesha. Along with him he goaded by singing songs of the camel driver. Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, Anjesha, drive slowly, as you are driving the mounts who were carrying glass vessels. Allah had a black slave. Now, we'll be showing that he was a white man a bit later on, but evidently he had black slaves. That is just one instance of him owning a black slave named Anjesha. And we have to understand, and that's the narrative context that's going on within the sort of Arabic world during that time. That people have owned slaves. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that that owning slaves wasn't something that was common back then. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is this man is touted as the final prophet, the one who is after Jesus Christ, the one who gives the final revelation. And, that's a big role. To say that this man's the greatest man to ever exist is a big assertion. And I believe that that claim needs to be justified by what we're seeing here in the Quran Hadith. Sahih Muslim. Now, the Quran doesn't really speak about Muhammad. It's mentioned him 4 times. The Quran is not extensive when it comes to who Muhammad is. But, yeah, I digress. There's other verses as well, like, the last hour will not come until Muslims kill Jews, for example. So we've got Sahih Muslim 29:22, Abu Hurairah, Allah's Messenger, Abu Hurairah purported Allah's Messenger as saying, the last hour will not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree and stone, and would say, Muslim or servant of Allah, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill it. But the tree Gurkhad will not say, for it's the tree of the Jews. Now, not only that is absolutely hilarious, imagine there's a tree ratting on Jews. You're talking about some sort of Nickelodeon stuff, like just straight Nickelodeon. You're talking about, straight trees walking around and speaking, That's the kind of like Tom and Jerry / Mickey Mouse back in the day pipe dream crap. I mean? There's no tree speaking. And, there's another verse, like, by the way, in the Hadith. There's another passage in Hadith that mentioned another tree speaking and being an informant. That's already weird. But, I mean, outside of that, imagine that there is going to be this anti-Semitic attack on the Jews. Michael Clancy, I've been a Jew for 6... So, Jew. You see how my brain's walk, bro? Oh man, I've been a Christian for 6 years, bro. I haven't been a Jew in my life at all. It's because I was speaking about the Jews and the Gurkha tree and all that stuff. Yeah, so the Gurkha tree will not say anything because he is a tree of the Jews. So, if you are supposedly attacked by any Muslims in terms of the final day, then yeah, I suggest hiding behind the Gurkha tree if you are a Jew. If you know where that is, if there was I don't even know where the Gurkha tree is, and why is it talking? I don't know. Women lack intelligence. Another reason why I'm not Muslim. Now there's so much passages, but I'll just read this final one. Riyad al-Salihin, 1879. The Prophet said, "Oh, women folk, you should give charity and be diligent in seeking Allah's forgiveness, because I've seen that the dwellers of hell are women." A woman amongst them said, "Why is that the majority? Why is it that the majority of dwellers of hell are women?" So apparently, the majority of people in hell are women. The Prophet replied, you curse frequently and are grateful to your husbands, in spite of your lacking wisdom. Obviously, this is works-based salvation. In spite of your lacking in wisdom and failing in religion, you are depriving the wisest men of their intelligence. So basically, by saying you're depriving the wisest men of your intelligence, is you're so dumb that you're literally robbing intelligent people of their smartness. Upon this, the woman asks, "What is deficiency in our wisdom and our religion?" He replied, "Your lack of wisdom can be well judged from the fact that the evidence of 2 women is equal to that of 1 man. You do not offer Salah prayer for some days and do not fast the whole of Ramadan sometimes. Here's a deficiency in your religion." So there is evidently an issue here. Women lack intelligence; they're not wise, and it's like that's just straight misogyny. That's not even like, I'm sorry, that's just straight misogyny. That's just like, yeah, you women ain't doing nothing. You know, it's just state-sponsored propaganda. If it is, I need some money right now. So y'all need to give it to me if you're state. If you are the state, in fact, Donald Trump, you know where I am. Give me some money. There's just this, which I find to be funny because some days it is true. I heard the Prophet saying evil omen is in 3 things: the horse, the woman, and the house. The woman, bro. And there's just so much stuff. I've got so much hadith. It's ridiculous, man. There's hadith about rape. There's hadith about Allah Shin. There's hadith about 7 Ajwa dates, Muhammad snorting there's just hadith and hadith and hadith, right? So that's one of the reasons. The conduct of Muhammad, according to the hadith, is something that I don't agree with. I don't think that one being a slave owner, a random unaliver who robbed caravans, who great people. We've got the likes of Safiya bin Huyay. If you've never heard of Safiya bin Huyay, look it up. The fact is, she was of a sort of family who were polytheists, and Muhammad comes in and he's like, boom, I'm gonna destroy your entire bloodline and keep you and marry you. So he basically takes her and marries her. I don't know what's going on with my man there, fam. Like, nah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, the Mohammedan are casting in this chat. It's like, look, don't be sad. Be happy. Be happy that, I'm at least reading your works. It's kind of funny when they're angry about this stuff. It's like, this is the words of your prophet, mate. Like, I don't know what you're angry about. You should be happy about me reading it. So there's so much. The Zandika, the atheist, the people dying. It's just weird. So yeah, my third reason for not being a Muslim is simply because, we've dealt with earlier on, the Quran confirms the Hadith. Sorry, the Quran confirms the Gospel and the Torah. That's a blatant contradiction. We've got Muhammad's actions, something that one shouldn't follow. And then we've got now, according to the Quran, it's a clear book. I'm going to read a few passages that affirm the Quran is a clear book. Then we'll get to the actual argument. So we're going to go to Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, verses 2. So chapter 2 of the Quran, verses 2. Sing along if you know the words. Sing along if you know the word. This is the scripture of which there is no doubt, a guidance of those who ward off evil. So there's no doubt about what this says. Let's go to Surah 11 verses 1. Surah 11 verses 1. Now, I mean, obviously, after the Alif Lam Mim, there is a load of, this is a clear book. This is a book you should trust. This is a book that's sent by God. This is a book, so it does really say that. Yeah, I mean, like, I haven't even got to camel urine. I didn't even get to that. I don't have time. So, I mean, imagine there's a lot more that you guys think, like, that I've not just mentioned, because I have so much of it. My Google Docs are just not bereft of Islamic content. Okay, so we're going to look at Surah 11, verses 1. It says, "This is a scripture, the revelations of which are perfected, then explained. It comes from one wise and informed." So the Quran is perfect according to this, and it says it is the revelations which are, again, clear and then explained. So it's well explained. Surah 15, verses 1 says this. Chapter 15, verses 1. Chapter 15, verses 1. I don't know why I'm on Surah 14. It's really annoying trying to do this whilst holding my phone up. Let me do this, actually. How you doing, Dr. H, or Doctor Who, 2005? It says, Alif Lam Ra, these verses of the scripture and are plain readings. So the scriptures are plain. And then finally, Surah 29, verses 1. Which says here, Surah 29, verses 1, or 2, I think it is. I think it's 29 verses 1. Maybe it's not. Anyway, so yeah, you get the gist. The Quran's a clear book. It is clear. We are told it's clear. Now let's go to chapter 3, verses 7, where the contradiction is. He it is who has revealed to you, Muhammad, the scripture in which are clear revelations. So even this says clear revelations. There are the substance of the book, and others which are allegorical, but those in whose hearts doubt pursue that which is allegorical. So according to this verse, there are verses that are clear, and there are verses that are unclear. But that contradicts the Quran's claim that the Quran is a clear book. So that would be the contradiction. That there's passages in the Quran that say that the Quran is clear, and yet the Quran itself says it's not clear. So we dealt with that dilemma, and that's a problem within the religion of Islam, and I don't even need to get into that. The other thing was Tawheed. Tawheed is also a problem. We've dealt with that a bit. We've touched on it. Surah 19, verses 16 to 19 says that the angel, it doesn't even say angel. Most translations say angel. It doesn't say angel. It says the Spirit of Allah visited Mary, became a man, said, "I'll give you a son." That goes against Tawheed, because obviously within Allah there is not a multiplicity according to this system of thought. But evidently there is, because Allah has a spirit. Also, Allah has a word. Chapter 4, verse 171 says that Jesus Christ is the word of Allah. His word and a spirit from him is the words used. By Ruh Minhu, which is a word from, a spirit from him, literally proceeding forth from him. Which again, it links with Christian theology in the sense that we believe the Spirit comes from God the Father. We believe Jesus Christ is the eternal Word. So all of these things are heavily tied up within the Islamic religion. And again, Allah's attributes the 99 names. He has 99 names. He's the most merciful, the most loving. Is he most merciful when he's most loving? No. Is he most merciful and loving at the same time? No. This would be a contradiction, when it comes to P being not P at the same time. When it comes to Allah, who's supposedly one, Surah Al-Ikhlas, chapter 12 of the Quran says this. If he's not begotten, he's one, he's ahad, he's one. If that's the case, then we have an issue, because oneness is not defined. What's my opinion on Buddhism? It's false. So yeah, I mean, I've dealt with 4. I might have to sort out what was going on here. 1 minute. Mars says, does he not have my phone number? Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, yeah, I mean, so yeah, we've dealt with a few Islamic dilemmas. The final one's going to be, it's just going to be, ultimately, I don't believe, and this is just a personal position, my personal thoughts on Islam, just primarily speaking outside of the context of the narrative of the Quran and doing polemics. I just don't believe it's from God. I believe the God of this universe is one who's created us in his image. I believe the reason why people have the reason why people have humanity, humility, love, and all of these good and gracious stuff is because of the God of creation. And I don't believe that is the God Allah. I believe that the God Allah is a brothel owner, a pimp, one who is okay with the atrocities Islam caused, and in fact calls him the final prophet. And not only that, but one who fatalistically determines every single event that actually occurs. Which is as a reformed Christian, as somebody who believes in God's sovereignty, that goes against and violates, divine justice. It really does. To say that, I as a human being, have no action in my control insofar as I can't act out, or I can't sin, or I can't do this, and that be something that's actually attributed to me, but it be written in the pen before I've been born, is a problem. It's a real problem. And, I didn't even get to the doctrine of Al-Qaeda because it's just too long and I haven't got enough time for that. Another reason is the Quran is 700 years removed after the earliest writings of the Bible. I mean, written by somebody in Arabia that we don't know. We don't know who this person Muhammad was. We only know who he is because of the hadith. And really, we don't really know who he is from the hadith. We know different people saying stuff about him according to 7 supposed transmission of hadith literature, which many Muslims deny to this day. Look, the Quran doesn't really speak about Muhammad. When I read the Quran, I read real plot holes when it comes to, well, Abraham built the Kaaba, but who's Abraham? Why is he significant? Jesus is called the Messiah. Why? Who is Jesus? Why is he called the Messiah? None of these questions are answered. Why the Bani Israel? Why the children of Israel important? Why does the Quran point to a book that that Muslims think is corrupt? There's a lot of issues there that simply can't be rubbed out and ignored. And so I, as a Christian, outside of the paradigm, because when I was an atheist, I denied Islam. It's just too much to consider, too much plot holes, too much problems, too much begging of questions. I've already mentioned Muhammad's contact, so I don't need to go there. But the character of Jesus Christ is one of holiness. In John chapter 12, we see that Jesus Christ took off his entire clothes, wore a towel around himself, and washed his disciples' feet. In the book of John chapter 6, Jesus Christ, feeds 5,000 people. Jesus Christ lived the life of a nomad. Jesus Christ went around, living a life of donations that people would give him. He wasn't a hunter-gatherer. He wasn't going around spearheading people. He wasn't going around having 11 wives and having one bath after having sex with 11 wives. He wasn't putting his tongue in a child's mouth, and he definitely did not have any sort of sexual relations with a child. The question's got to be then, if I'm looking at the character of this man, and I'm looking at the character of this man, if I'm picking these 2 books up, alongside this, because by the way, this and this are interlinked. If I'm picking this up and I'm, cracking this open, I'm seeing that this dude is, not as good as this dude. I'm going to follow the good one. I want to follow one who's righteous, And who would make that up? Jesus Christ's act of washing his disciples' feet. Who would make that up? Who would invent that of their God? That Jesus Christ, in timidity, in meekness, decides to take his clothes off and wash his disciples' feet. We are not worthy. And that's the beauty of Christ, is that he is so loving that he would do that. The God of the universe. And yet this book identifies the God of the universe as merely a king to be served. The reason why we serve the righteous king is because he's worthy of it. God not only showed that he was king, but he showed he was deserving of it. But within Islam, we just hear of a God who's king, who claims to be king. How many times have kings been claimed to be king, bro? They're not worthy of it at all. How many times have prime ministers, politicians, Presidents claim to be leaders and not been worthy of it. We've got one up in the White House right now who's not worthy of being in that position. We've got Keir Starmer right now, not worthy of that position. What does that show you? The true king proved himself to be king. So I would rather worship that king. I'd rather worship that God. So I mean, the conduct of Jesus Christ is far greater. The standard that Jesus Christ gives is love your neighbor as yourself. Turn the other cheek. That's not the standard of Allah. Yeah. Um, so I mean that's where you have to really contend Muslims. What exactly does it mean to be loving? What does it exactly mean to be a prophet? What does it mean you know, um, for Jesus to be the way, truth, and life? And what does it mean to say Jesus exists? Muslims say they love Jesus more than us. I would say no, you are not as obsessed with Jesus as I am, because I search your Quran, and my Bible mentions Jesus way more than your Quran. My Bible affirms Jesus Christ is God Himself. My Bible mentions Jesus Christ is worthy of worship. Your Quran doesn't even mention anything He does, other than what healing a clay pigeon or being given the Spirit. Like there's nothing really that points to Jesus Christ as anything other than a mere prophet before you're a prophet. Whereas within the religion of Christianity, Christ is king, and He's the King of Kings. You know, um, you know. So I mean, I could have gone through so many arguments. There's so much more arguments, and there's many discourses on this. There is, for example, the transmission of the text of the Quran. I didn't even get to that. And if you want me to do a further video on this, I couldn't do that. But for there, I'll leave it. People can come back and review this video, and if you've got any questions, let me know. So before I go, I'll just answer a few questions, then I'll bounce out. Mr. Perspective says I have generally by authors in the last 100 years. The further back you go, the less history can actually make sense of. Well, that's not really an argument. Just because you can't make sense of something, that's a fallacy of incredulity. So just because you can't make sense of something, that doesn't mean that it can't be made sense of, and it can't be true. That's not an argument. Uh, we argue over who made the pyramids, but yeah, just because we argue over it, that doesn't mean nobody made the pyramids. It would be a foolish assertion to say this came out of nowhere, right? But you guys believe, as an atheist, that the world came from nothing. So I mean, make that make sense? No. If you can't make sense of it, you can't prove it. So by your logic, because I can't make sense of, the whole concept, at least of course within my limited data of it, rocket science, because I can't understand that more, therefore it's not proven. That's so stupid, bro. Come on, let's be real out here. Um, you know, the dinosaurs existed, that's a fact. You don't know that. You don't know that's a fact. When you said as a fact, that means that we have enough quantifiable evidence to be able to produce proof that dinosaurs existed. I'm sorry, a few bones don't mean anything. I could simply say these bones were created. They were created in labs. They were created by people who wanted to create a dinosaur. How do you know that's not the case? Right, but I could say that just the same thing about God. Somebody understands that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father and that He exists. So that's not an argument. You know. Uh, well, the Quran is not the final testament. I don't believe that at all. I believe that the Quran is a book created by the Abbasid Caliphate. The reason why I say this is because the Abbasid Caliphate were a kingdom that existed around the 9th century. The earliest Qurans you have in 114 pages are going to be the Sana manuscript around the time of the Abbasid Caliphate. The reason why the Abbasid Caliphate made up this religion is for the purpose of enslaving people and gaining traction with the modern world. That's what I believe. Exactly. It's just these are false forms of the Messiah. And I've noticed every religion wants to borrow from the Messiah. I want to go back to the true Messiah. And when I see his conduct, when I see his love, when I see his character, you know, when I see that he is weak, he is meek, he could be weary, he became tired. I'm like, I love that stuff. I love the fact that he became tired. I love the fact that he was on the earth. I love the fact that he lived a life of poverty. He didn't live to high esteem. I love the fact that God is, you know, mighty and powerful, and yet actually became like us. That God did not leave us alone, but entered into our suffering. I like that. And it's not just about me liking it, but it's because it's true. Um, uh, if you don't care what we believe in, then really you shouldn't be here. But you obviously do care, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So that's an illogical statement. People fight over politics. People fight over different shoes to wear or music choices. You know, you've come in here also to target religious people and to say don't fight while also fighting us. So how are you any different? Sorry, you're not breaking the barrier of that one. You haven't escaped the matrix. Like it's just people like you tire me. I used to be an atheist, and atheists make the most pathetic arguments. They simply just cannot accept that there's more to life than just their mere 1% of existence. And they cannot accept that Jesus Christ is Lord. They're opposed to him because they don't love righteousness. You don't love goodness. But goodness comes from somewhere. If I was an atheist, goodness doesn't exist. If atheism is true, goodness doesn't exist. Why should I love my neighbor as myself? Why in an atheist worldview should I treat others as I would like to be treated? You may say, oh, because, we might get hurt if we don't do that. That's selfish. But true love is selflessness, and that's grounded in the being of God. No, then you don't believe in something, because ultimately you can't even recognize, you can't even define what this thing is. So you don't believe in anything. In fact, I would argue you believe in a lot of things. You believe the laws of gravity will not change. You believe nature is uniform. You believe your mind is giving you a valid interpretation of the universe. You believe that you're a person. You believe you exist. You believe a lot. So it's spare of me. I don't believe. No, you do believe. You believe in a lot of stuff. Atheists believe in more than they will let out, and that's why I'm not an atheist, because it requires too much faith to be an atheist. Philip Evans Ison. Okay, so we're talking about Sam right now. Sam right now, God bless you, man. I haven't seen you in a while, Sam. It's good to see you in the chat. All is indeed well, Sam. I hope you're doing well over there in your discourse with the papist. You know what I mean? Getting into some random Mary worship and, wild stuff. You know what I mean? I would say this about Sam, though. I respect him. I do have still, to this day, a great love and respect for him. But, it's a shame that he went and turned to papacy. He turned to the papacy, man. That's a shame, Sam. That's a shame. But, we love you all the same. I'm called to love my enemies. So, I mean, and when I say my enemy, I don't even think you're my enemy. I'm called to love those who, deny Christ's words. I mean, Mr. Perspective, if I gave you a name for what it would be like to me trying to explain the universe, I can't. Because you can't define what it is for you to describe the universe, because you don't know the universe. You assume the universe, so that's a faith-based assumption. I'll say without Christ, there is no life. You must be born again. You must be made eternal through the Spirit of our Lord, and the only way to salvation is through Him. Trust in Him, and you will be saved. But anyway, I'm gonna you look up to the sky. Man says I look up. Man's argument for his existence is I look up, brethren. All right, on that note, that's wild. It's very much love and hate, respect to you, too, mate. Yeah, I mean, it's all good, man. You know what I mean? I don't hold a grudge against those who are papists. I just think that, like, papists I don't really have a problem with. Like, I think Eastern Orthodox are a lot ruder than papists. But I just, hope that you receive the Lord. That's it. Like, it's not about any form of hatred. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to be ducking out. You look up and see the stars. How do you know that, Mr. Perspective, you weird one, brat? Anyway, I'm going to duck out. God bless you. Philip, God bless you. Lloyd Walden, God bless you. I'm going to duck out. God bless. Take care.